You have some mate there, Andrea.
Yes.
Beautiful.
This is a Guarani sipping artistically made garden.
Gorgeous. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Ring Around Brazil. And it's wonderful to see everyone here. These ring arounds have been occurring across the broader network for Garland Magazine. Garland Magazine is currently in the clouds, like most of us, but as we know, clouds become water and rain and eventually come to earth, and certainly we're all personally in different lands, and I'm currently in the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And we've been covering the scenes in Africa, where we've heard of very strong and impressive community initiatives, in Vietnam, which has been an ideal country in terms of responding to COVID-19, to India, and now we come to Brazil, which is a very special area to focus on because of a number of reasons. One is that we have our final issue of Garland. The journey ends in South America. This is a journey over 5 years to understand the creative energies in the wider world in terms of the objects people make. So it's a very important moment to think ahead to that particular time. After this, we'll be going into a different phase, Garland 2.0, where we look at the questions that have been raised during this 5-year journey and start to think about how we can answer them, how we can respond to them. And so one of the questions regarding South America and Brazil in particular is the issue of history and time, and how it is that modernity arrives and supplants the more ancient histories that belong to Indigenous peoples, particularly their cosmovisions that help us understand the universe and our place in it. And we think of this particularly now that during the pandemic, it's apparent that one of the major victims in South America particularly are the Indigenous storytellers, the elders, and people who are considered living libraries are losing their lives at a great rate, and this is a significant loss, and it helps us appreciate their contribution. So we have with us at the moment Silvia Sasaoka, who's a Garland contributor in Sao Paulo, but also Ilanna Goldstein from Sao Paulo as well, an anthropologist, and Andrea Ferrari, a poet who's going to take us to one of the key stories in December, a very important story that has been rarely told from the Guarani, the MBR of that region. But I'd like to start with you, Silvia, if you wouldn't mind, because you have a very interesting story to tell in terms of your relationship to the crafts over many years, and the institute that you are currently with, Botucatu, in the outskirts of Sao Paulo. And you wrote a beautiful article about the Mingue story, given the Japanese heritage in Brazil. And you've been doing a lot of other work in terms of museums and so on, which you can share with us in terms of understanding what's happening in Brazil. But can you just start perhaps by reflecting on, I'm sure many people are interested to know what it's like to live in Brazil now with one of the highest rates of coronavirus in the world. How do you feel it?
Thank you, Kevin, for this presentation. I'm very happy to share my experience and talk with everyone. Well, living in Brazil now, it's very stressing time, kind of hopeless time, difficult, because not only because the pandemic, but because the government that doesn't help at all. It's getting worse and worse. So it really affects the lives of Brazilians. So I think maybe Ilanna also can talk about it. She knows. Well, but I've been working, maybe I should tell about my experience with the craft communities. I worked more than 20 years. Is there a ring? No.
Yes, Miriam is with us. Bom dia.
Okay. Hi, Miriam. I've been working more than 25 years with craft communities and working as, how to say, with a project on social design. I started when I was a project director in Museu A Casa, and then I developed the project gathering young students of design and craft makers from northeast of Brazil and from outskirts of São Paulo city. And then I worked with Artesanato Solidário for 10 years, and it's a non-governmental organization, and we worked to work with craft communities in 15 states, 17 states of Brazil. It was more than 100 communities with all kinds of techniques and craft techniques and craft, how to say, types of production. And that gave me a very big experience. That was kind of my university. And then besides that, I started a company, Strat, that we developed a project to gather international design students in craft communities. And after that, I moved to Botucatu, and I developed projects around this country area of São Paulo countryside, working with not traditional craft communities, but like more urban communities. And also I developed some project with the designer Renato Imbroisi, working with indigenous communities. And then I started to, because the projects were, we didn't have more like support to develop projects with craft communities. So it was getting less and less. So I decided to go back to study. Now I am in doctorate, PhD, developing a research on a bamboo lab. And I think this is the journey of my craft work, craft communities.
Thank you, Silvia. Did you have something to show us in terms of lace?
Yes. Oh, yes. Because most of the communities I worked with in Artesanato Solidário was laces, and then I chose to share with you the lace, 6 laces presentation. We call Renda Brasileira, Brazilian laces. It was a project exhibition we did in Sesc Belenzinho, São Paulo. So these 6 lakes techniques that I show, it has been practiced for over 100 years by women lace makers in Brazil. They call Yanduti, Renascença, Irish, Frivolité, Filet, and bobbin lace. In the year of 2013, me and my project partner, Renato Imbroisi, organized the Brazilian Lace event in São Paulo. We gathered these 6 techniques lace makers and the products from 15 states of Brazil for exhibition, lectures, and workshops that are in the following image. Next. The lace had arrived in Brazil with European ladies and missionary nuns in convents, and for a long time it became an option of income generating work, and this know-how was spread through the country. With the mass production of industrialized laces, craft work lost the attraction of a job. Lace makers' young daughters didn't want to learn about the work of handmade lace in the modern context. But thanks to the support of NGOs and government programs, there has been some resignification of this craftsmanship, and many lace makers still persist and are attentive to fashion trends and seek to renew and innovate their work. Next. This is Yanduti lace. This Yanduti lace means spider net in Guarani indigenous language. And they weave mandalas in a frame with needle and thread. There, we invited 2 groups from São Paulo, from Atibaia and Dois Córregos. Next. Next slide, please. This is a Renaissance lace. Renaissance laces arrived in Brazil in the middle, yes, this is Renaissance, yeah. Arrived in Brazil in the middle of 19th century with the Portuguese missionary nuns. They use a pillow and it's folded by a drawing on paper mold. They fix a cotton lace and begin the filling with the needle and thread. There are many, many craft lace makers communities in Brazil, mostly in Northeast, Pernambuco and Paraíba. Yes, next. Next slide, please. Yeah. This is Irish lace. This Irish lace is made just as Renaissance lace technique, but the difference is the material. They use a satin cord or lace. It's originally it was made by silk. It was brought to Brazil with the Irish missionaries in early 20th century to the state of Sergipe. There is the only community in Sergipe state that's called Divina Pastora. They make this kind of this Irish lace. Next, please. And this is a Frivolité lace. Frivolité also came from Europe. It's made basically with fingers, crochet thread, and a small tool called navette. This lace process is very complex and takes time, very much time. So we see mostly small fine pieces of accessories and little application in clothing. This is more individual. We found more individual makers. I don't know if it has, it's linked to the long process of making, but we only found individual lace makers in Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, and Paraíba. And next, please. And next slide, please. Yes. This is a filet lace. There are no records of the way filé lace arrived in Brazil, which led to believe that it's a genuinely Brazilian handcraft. The fillet is woven on a handmade net, similar to that of fishermen, with cotton thread with needle, and they embroider this grid. There are many lace makers, fillet lace makers in Ceará state and Alagoas state, but it's very popular in Northeast. Next bobbin, next slide, please. And finally, this is a bobbin lace. It's made by braiding and twisting lengths of thread. It was brought to Brazil by the Portuguese from Azores Island, established in the southern state, but then expanded and established in the Northeast region as one of the most expressive local traditions. The main working tools of the lace makers are cushion, bobbins, mold, pins, thread. And there are many outstanding bobbin lace makers in Brazil, and Piauí, the Piauí state, Ceará. It's spread all over the Northeast. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Silvia. And it's a taste of the, the richness of Brazilian culture, that you have such a diversity of forms of lace that reflect the different kinds of colonization, European influence, but at the same time mixing with indigenous and the history of settler cultures within Brazil after colonization as well. And we've been profiling the work of Christus Nobrega in Garland, who's a Brazilian artist who's been working with many of these communities. So we've seen how an artist can interpret it too, so it can take on different trajectories. But we might move along. So thank you very much, Silvia, and stay along for the discussion. I wanted to now just say hello to Miriam Mirna Korolkovas. If you want to unmute yourself. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, bom dia.
Bom dia, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Well, this is very exciting because Brazil Jewellery Week is an amazing event in the global jewellery scene. And it shows how jewellery can extend beyond the very refined, delicate worlds of city galleries and collectors, and draw on the material cultures around Brazil, the indigenous cultures. And Miriam's, you've been a pioneer, even though the word pioneer is perhaps difficult, but you have really helped develop this unique event, as well as working in a Casa Brasileiro, the museum in Brazil, for many exhibitions. So I want to welcome you and ask you, how are you? How is life, do you think, now in Brazil?
I think it's still happening. The COVID is still working around. But I think in the east side is much better than the west side. So COVID is going to Pacific now, I think, according to the notices. And but they were working at home. As I know, everybody tells that they are working too hard at home. But of course, they mix to embrace, because you know how the Brazilians, they want to touch people, they want to kiss and embrace. And this is very difficult for us. So that's why
Zoom is very safe.
Yeah, Teresa has to be, right? Especially the older people, they are very careful. you see.
Mm.
Okay, it's going on. But I feel sorry because, you know, Brazil have people that lives in comfortable places, and other that lives in very poor community. So I have one beside my house, not so far. So what you do, sometimes you give them food, of course, and they cannot stay all together in one room, you know, so they go out. So it's dangerous because they may spread out this, but that's the life here in Brazil. It's very diversity of economic, social life.
Yes, it makes things a lot more complicated, which is why it's difficult in South America particularly. But tell us about, here you are with some jewelry, carrying what looks like a piece of tree. Tell us about Brazil Jewellery Week. What do you want to achieve with this event?
Yes, let me tell you that, as you said, Brazil is new in this area, and they were not courses, jewelry courses, or in Brazil since the 80 decades in the last century, because I went outside. I went to practice institute in the United States to do my master's. So now we have courses of masters and the PhD as well. I have friends that are they are studying hard about this area, but it was kind of new, of course. Now it's spread out. I think our jewelry forum has helped with it, and with the galleries and with the schools. I had a school in the 80th decade. Yeah, I don't have it anymore. Just last the 80th decade. And but now it's going very very good. The how nice. Because you are having now not only the museum, a casa, Museu do Objeto Brasileiro, it calls Brazilian Museum of Brazilian Object. Since I saw some Silvia's work that she just showed here, that was shown in a casa, because they valorize the Brazilian craft, and they are the first museum that is always inviting us to make some exhibition in contemporary jewelry. So this is very good, but could spread out, and you can travel with these works around the world. Last year, we went to 2 years ago, we went with the exhibition to Lithuania, to Sweden, and to Finland. So now the Finlandese is coming here this year, at the end of the year. They're gonna mix Brazilian with the Finlandese, so we are connecting the whole world. But I think first you have to join the Brazilians together, and now Núcleo Joalheria Lab Jewelry School from Chrissy Barban, who just inaugurated the first Brazilian Jewelry Week here last year. She wants this year to join all the South Americans. So it's a kind of step-by-step job, work, not job, step-by-step work that you're growing up very fast, I think. And so, of course,
tell me, Miriam, your own work is unusual because you go out of the city. What do you do in the communities as a jeweler?
Oh, yes. Since a long time ago, I go to visit indigenous people. I had the opportunity be baptized. I'm a Karao, from Karao ethnia too. Since I like so much, they adopted me. So I traveled the center of Brazil, the north of Brazil. And those last years, I've been traveling around the rivers in Amazons. And they are mixed. They are not only the indigenous. They, you know, that you recognize from their faces, they, of course, they comes from indigenous extraction, but they are mixed with other people too. And so they live in small communities, a community of family, I see. So you have to travel by boat all the time to visit your relatives, to visit parents live together with the family, but to live, to visit friends or to go to school. So it's a kind of very different scenario. And I used to go there to deal with the people, especially with the young people, who wants to do something with the hands and with the body. Since I'm a body performer as well, I was ballerina a long time ago. And then I joined all those young people who wants to do the course. And we explore the material from around the area. So they catch seeds, leaves, benches of trees, everything on the floor. And you make ornamental, how to say, jewelry, ornament to wear it. It's very nice, very nice. And
there you are at work.
Yeah. Oh yes. I forgot. I said you. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's it. It was 3 years ago, something like this. And they are very,
yes,
very.
Well, this is a kind of energy we look forward to, and certainly with Garland Magazine, working with you to help more people know about what's happening in Brazil Jewelry Week when it comes up, Miriam.
Yeah, we want to you know, you wanted to get together with all the people, indigenous, the quilombolas, have this Afro-descendant, and and like me from Europe. So you are all mixed. You are all mixed, but sometimes you have to get into those places to join with them and to change culture, to change activity.
Yes, well, that's the challenge of the South. So thank you so much, Miriam. Please stay while we continue the discussion and move to Ilanna Goldstein. Greetings, Ilanna. Ilanna is a very interesting and unique scholar who has come to Australia looking and comparing the places of Aboriginal art and Brazilian art, and has been working. Are you still at the Universidade Federal de São Paulo? Yes. As a professor, and involved in many different anthropological journals, and following the path of artists like Ernesto Neto, working with different communities. And so welcome. What do you think life is like at the moment in Sao Paulo?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the invitation, Kevin. I met Kevin when I was in Australia for my PhD, I think 10 years ago. I was interested in understanding how indigenous arts industry developed so strongly in Australia. Indigenous arts is sold in contemporary art galleries in Australia, and all the big art museums, art galleries show indigenous arts, traditional contemporary crafts for a Brazilian like us, Silvia, Miriam. It's very unique, very rare to see a country that has developed public policies and fostering strategies for indigenous people to be accepted, to have room in the art system. So I went to Australia to understand and to contrast, to compare with Brazilian situation, which is the opposite. We don't have anything here, no prizes, no scholarships specific for indigenous artists. Well, so that's how why I went to Australia some years ago and how I met Kevin. So thanks, I'm very happy to be here with you. And now I will try to answer Kevin's question before I show you some pictures. I think the situation here is a challenge. People that I know, researchers, indigenous artists, curators, people from the cultural field are very depressed, Kevin, very, very. Not only because of the pandemic. Of course, this is a very big problem and we are all afraid. But I think the biggest problem is our government. In the moment, our government doesn't see education, science, culture, and arts as a priority. I will not discuss that. That's not our aim here. But I think it's not possible just to ignore that, because indigenous people are losing lands like never. They are dying more than ever. And not only because of the new virus, but because their lands are being invaded by big farmers. The forests are being burned. Gold miners feel very free to get into indigenous territories now, because we don't have people to, the army, the police, the environmental organizations, they are not empowered at the moment. They don't have money, they don't have people to work, they don't have airplanes, they don't have trucks. So it's very easy at the moment to get into indigenous lands, to burn them, to explore gold in these indigenous lands, and to kill indigenous people. So, sorry if I'm talking about not pleasant subjects, because Miriam and Silvia have showed such beautiful things, wonderful things, but I cannot help talking about this difficult situation.
Well, Ilanna, if I can just say that you are not alone. Brazil isn't the only country suffering under a democratically elected government that seems to disregard culture. The big nation above you in North America obviously is a key example of that as well. And Australia, unfortunately, is facing similar challenges. So that makes it all the more important that we work together and show each other support, because it can be depressing when you see exactly how the support for culture is being taken away in order to make money purely for profit. So tell us what you would like to present as the an important side of Brazil. I've got the presentation here if you like. Would that?
Please, can you open it?
Sure.
I think that the art production could be a way to get more visibility to indigenous issues. Mm-hmm. That's something new in Brazil. So my research topic in the last 5 years has been the emergence of contemporary indigenous artists in Brazil. I have observed maybe 12, 15, 20 indigenous artists that are emerging very recently, and they are using their arts to feel more powerful and to be visible for the national society. So maybe arts can be a kind of gun, a symbolic gun, a spiritual gun to help in this fight. So I will present here 4 examples of this contemporary indigenous art scene that is very new, very fresh in Brazil. And I find that very interesting, not well known, but it soon may become more recognized, I hope. The first picture you are seeing here is a painting by a group of Huniquim individuals. Huniquim people live in Acre, Amazonia, North Brazil, and they have created an artistic group called Macu, whose aim is to register into drawings and paintings their myths and their visionary experiences when they drink ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is a kind of tea made by 2 Amazonic plants. And when you drink ayahuasca, you have some special visions. All the healing rituals of Huniquim people use this ayahuasca drink. And when you drink ayahuasca, you see a kind of pattern called kene. And you always see the boa snake, the stricter snake. It's called jiboia in Portuguese. So what you see here is a representation of the ancestral snake that you see when you drink ayahuasca and some parts of the myth. Next picture is also a painting by Macu, the same group which was created by Huniquim young people. Here there are some words written in Huniquim language. And you see again some parts of the body of the ancestral snake, the boa. You see, in many places you see. And you can see also the shaman in the middle of the painting. So what I find interesting in this case is the synesthetic dimension. Because when they drink ayahuasca, they feel tastes, perfumes, they hear music, they see colors. So all the senses are combined in the ayahuasca and ritual experience. And that's what they try to put in their drawings and paintings. It's a way to register tradition and to make their visions material and concrete, not ephemeral. Macu has been invited to paint in some museums. That's very new for indigenous Brazilian artists. Macu was invited at the Fondation Cartier in Paris in 2013. They had an individual exhibition, which was very beautiful. You can find the catalog online. And they have been invited also here in São Paulo to paint some walls. For example, in the Modern Art Museum in São Paulo, they were invited to make a big painting with many scenes of the ayahuasca ritual experience and a big snake around it. It was exhibited during 2 or 3 months in 2016. So it's one example of indigenous artists that are starting to gain, to get some room in the art system in Brazil. The second example, can you please change the slide? Kevin? Thanks. So the second example, this is a woman called Arisana Pataxó. She lives in Bahia. She's from the Pataxó people. In fact, she's a teacher. She works in indigenous schools. And she went to the university. She likes watercolor, not only, but she's good in watercolor. And her main subject is the interaction between indigenous peoples and non-indigenous peoples and Western society. So in this painting, you see a man with a camera, and in the next, can you please change? Another watercolor by Arisana Pataxó, showing the army, many people from the army, white people, against one indigenous guy with no fire guns, with the traditional guns. So it's a metaphor. Just 2 more examples of this emerging contemporary art scene in Brazil. Next, please. This artist will be invited for next São Paulo International Biennial next year. He is from Baniwa people, from Amazonas, but he lives in Rio de Janeiro now. He is the designer for all placards, posters that indigenous movement needs. He's a very good graphic designer, a performer and a painter. Denilson Baniwa likes to be ironic with Western art history. So in this painting, you see the baby Jesus Christ is an indigenous child. Next, please. Here you see the Mona Lisa with indigenous painting in her face. He makes also things to sell, shirts and notebooks. And last example, please, Kevin, can you change? And this example is someone that comes from an Amazonian people, the Macuxi, but he lives in Curitiba, in South Brazil, Paraná. And he has produced a very beautiful little book that you see here in the picture, telling the story of his mother. His mother was taken from her people, Macuxi, when he was 10 years old. She was taken by a white couple. And so he was grown away from his people. But now that he's an adult, he's traveling often to the village, he's learning the language, and he's using art to renew, to recreate his own identity. Last one. Please, can you change, Kevin? This is another work by this Gustavo Caboclo. He's invited as well for next São Paulo International Biennial. And this is a work he will present. In the left part of the picture, you can see the National Museum in Rio de Janeiro, who was in fire 2 years ago, very sadly. It was our biggest museum. And things that belonged to Gustavo Caboclo's ancestors were here in this museum. That's why he was so touched, because many things that he thinks belonged to his family and to his people just disappeared because white people didn't take care of these objects. So I will finish here. This is a small sample just to tell you that my actual interest now, what I am researching is really this emergence of indigenous artists in Brazil. And I think it could be an answer to their difficult situation.
Thank you very much, Ilanna. And it hadn't really come home to me the tragedy of people who trusted the museum to look after their precious cultural objects when that museum is not really cared for to the point where it burns down is a great loss. But I think what you reflect is increasingly indigenous cultures in Brazil becoming visible. So while there is perhaps many problems that are invisible, people cannot see the land being taken and the murders and so on. This is one way in which people can at least remember that these are parts of the culture of Brazil and growing parts. So thank you so much. And it's a very good link to our final participant, Andrea Ferrari, who's been involved in a very important project that will feature in Garland in December. Andrea, you've come along like some wonderful work of fate to the Garland project with your interest in the MBR people of the Guarani tribes, which cut across Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil as a very important group of indigenous people. I see you've got your mate. You are in Buenos Aires at the moment, is that right? What's life like in Buenos Aires?
Well, hello. I'm very happy to be here with you and to listen to all these wonderful stories. Thank you for inviting me, even though I'm not in Brazil. Buenos Aires is doing slightly better, I think, or Argentina is doing slightly better than Brazil. But I couldn't help, as you were talking, as we were discussing, to feel that we are talking also as a way of making visible these wonderful cultures, that we are aware the value they have, and we would really like others to be able to see the value that is not only cultural but is also ecological, and it has so many layers that I cannot finish discussing the layers.
Yes, this is the project is a very deep one, Andrea, which will be unfolding in December. Can you perhaps just quickly tell us, how you became involved in it, and I'll put it up on the screen.
Yeah. All right. Do you want me to discuss the Ayvu Rapyta or the
yes, thanks.
game? All right. One of my most important impressions about the Guarani nation, because it's a nation spread over Paraguay and Brazil. Those of you who live in Sao Paulo surely are aware of this, was that even though it was not a culture with a written language, someone in the 1950s, Leon Cadogan, had been trusted with the most sacred texts of that culture, which are really oral and living texts, because they're not written, they are prayed and sung and danced in Boa villages. That text is called the Ayvu Rapyta, which means the foundation of words, the beginning of language. And it tells the story, the creational story of the Boa Guarani people, which is one of the ethnic groups that compose the bigger Guarani nation. I was very, very much impressed by this text. And Kevin, around, I don't know, I think it was 2015, Kevin, that you had set a challenge on the web if anybody was interested in translating the Ayvu Rapyta in English. And I'm a literature teacher. I teach English literature in 2 schools in Buenos Aires, and I'm a translator, and I'm also a writer, and I write poetry in English. So I thought, well, why not? with a lot of humility and a lot of respect. And after doing a lot of research and after really becoming friends after the years of people in a community that you see in that picture, beloved friends that I have in near Iguazu, I dared to translate the Ayvu Rapyta into English with the help of a wonderful person who really knows Guarani. Leon Cadogan had translated and had offered a version in both Guarani and Spanish. What we did was to try to keep a balance between the Spanish and the Boa, but basically base ourselves in the Boa version. Thanks to Roberto Benigno Benitez, a friend of mine who's from Paraguay and who speaks the language, which is not the same as Paraguayan Guarani language. It's a different language, which, by the way, I'm learning now also with difficulty. So the culture arises as a wonderful, wonderful thing if you read the Ayvu Rapyta. The depth of vision, the connection with nature that the text shows. It's absolutely amazing. I feel honored, and I'm really very, very careful in the work of translating this into English. And I'm always thinking of how this could help my friends, basically, in any way. I don't know, perhaps it's the visibility we're talking about. No one has even heard of that book, in my country at least, much. No one knows it. And the text the text has got the level of a Popol Vuh, which is much more famous.
Perhaps you can just briefly also tell us about the one of the crafts in that community.
Yes, this is a wonderful craft that has the Guarani make and produce a lot of crafts, perhaps mostly for tourists, but this one is one that they use at home, at school, and this one was made by Lidio Caraítatand in wood, but this game can be played on the earth with stones of different kinds. You don't really need it to be in wood because you just draw the lines on the ground. It is called Jaguarete Cora, which means like the Jaguarete's den, and it's a mixture between chess and checkers in a way. It's a strategy game in which the dogs face the jaguar, and the jaguar can eat the dogs cannot eat the jaguar. The dogs can only corner the jaguar so that it cannot move anymore in any of the corners. And so it doesn't have a time like chess that can be agreed by the players. But basically, the jaguar wins when there are only 6 dogs left because he has eaten them. And the dogs win if the jaguar has been cornered and cannot move anymore. This is a game played by children and adults as well in the villages, or the village I know.
And you say that the jaguar is still quite a significant being in those communities.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that is right, because as you might know, communities, the places where communities, Boer communities at least in Misiones, live, have very healthy rainforest. And therefore, many of them have jaguars near. Actually, you can hear them at night. And so the game, as explained by Lidio, not me, echoes and teaches to children the importance of jaguars as not only a mythical animal for the culture, a very important mythical animal for the culture, but also the factual importance that it's a predator like them, if you want, because we are hunters like jaguars. And so it teaches the respect and the strategies that one might use to coexist with jaguars.
Now, obviously, it's a very complex text that we don't have time to explore now, but part of the project is working with that community, looking at how it is that they might gain from this translation, and in what ways do you think they're interested in this project? What's their interest?
they, you know, I was very careful to ask for permission because the Mwawarani have always evaded us. And Cadogan was trusted with the text because he held a Mwa native. But when we speak about this with Mwa Guaraníes, they're never very, let's say, happy to reveal things. Therefore, I asked for permission. They say it's okay because it's basically Cadogan's version. And I came to understand also that the living text of the Ayvu Rapyta exists in every village and with variations because it's a living text. We only have one version. Their interest really is, they said yes, that it didn't really matter to translate it into English, at least those that I could ask. And yes, they would gain from the visibility, and they are also so far from visibility in my country. So much prejudice goes against them that even if lands are taken from them, like from the village I know, they have no water. I'm not only talking about running water, but good wells. They need that. They need wells. They present themselves so in such a dignified, respectable way that they don't want paternalist help. They want help in projects that can benefit their community, but done by them and their projects, not our projects, their projects. So if out of this there could come any good for them, it would be wonderful. They need water, they have orchards, they have a nursery for native trees, and the next plan is a nursery for native medicine plants that they would like to start. That's a nice project. And basically the most important problem is water. Yeah.
Well, what you and they have to offer Garland readers is quite an important text that helps us see a way in which the world was conceived to come to be, and which tells us something unique about the human condition and a living culture in the world today. And in return, we hope that Garland readers will support that community and those sorts of issues that you said they face. So let's hope we can win trust both ways from readers and the storytellers of Ayvu Rapyta. Thank you very much, Andrea. And we'll be in touch again, no doubt, towards the end of the year. And I just wanted to finish on a colleague of mine, Fregmonto Stokes. Greetings from Melbourne.